Be careful who you dream with. For them, it's just another project.
Yeah.
Right? For you, it had been something that you had been living with and carrying for a while.
Welcome back. Episode 3 in the house. We're so glad you guys are here. And if you're watching on YouTube, thanks. Like the last episode, I feel like we called you out. We said, join us on YouTube.
Yes.
Brand new set. Beautiful things. By the way, I just got to say, this is like a set for ADHD people. Because if I was watching this, I would be constantly picking apart things and like seeing things.
What is that? What is that? Has that changed?
You were like, maybe things need to change over the season. So stay tuned for that. Welcome to the SALT Podcast. So excited you guys are with us, and we are in for a treat. Talked about this in the last one, but we've changed the sort of conversation a little bit. Mm-hmm. We want to be a little more conversational, but we want to jam this thing with value.
So much value, jam-packed.
And there's a conversation that I had with Gary Molander, who's been a part of SALT for years. He's a filmmaker. He's a creative. He wrote a book called Creating Art, Pursuing Christ, or maybe it's Pursuing Christ, Creating Art, because you have to pursue Christ first. So I totally just butchered that, but it's on Amazon. I'm sure if you search those two words together,
they'll show up. Yeah.
But Pursuing Christ, Creating Art, and kind of how artists react to our relationship with Christ and in the church. It's so good. He actually was one of the first speakers at SALT ever.
Oh, wow.
He was one of the first keynotes ever.
Wow.
And he was at conferences, pastor. And so we had a great conversation. And he tells this great story of us inviting him in to the SALT idea before anyone really knew of it. And he's got
very
a pretty
unique. Not a lot of people were in on that.
No, and we were really careful about who we were dreaming with and all this. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want to say anything more. I want to jump right into this.
Yeah.
Here is our conversation with Gary Molander. Before I even shared the vision of SALT, which was ultimately what that was about.
That's what that was about.
I was trying to say the Lord has put on my heart to create a gathering for creatives, but you said something right when we sat down that is stuck with me forever, and this is what I want to unpack for this community. You said the phrase, because I think you said like, hey, I'm so grateful that you are inviting me here, but you also said, I'm grateful that you've limited it to this, just this. Because you said, I can tell there's something on your life, Luke, or this calling. Be careful who you dream
with.
Unpack that.
Yeah, be careful who you dream with. When you have, every time in my life I had a God-given dream, whether it was around a project when I was serving as a pastor, or at the ultimate was when I quit being a pastor, and then everyone wanted to partner with me because I had a God dream.
Yeah.
And they wanted to, and I think in the best sense, they wanted to latch on.
Yeah.
Right. And so I said, be careful who you dream with.
Yeah.
Because not everyone not everyone has the same calling on your life that you do. And the argument is, now that I'm older, I could say no one does.
Yeah. Well, I remember in that conversation when we started talking and unpacking this, you said like, oh, I can tell this is in its infancy. I'm thinking right now as we're having this conversation, there's someone listening to this who has a God dream, whether that's a project in their church, a side hustle thing. It could be an initiative that they want to bring before their pastor that they know that they are called to do, or whatever that is.
Yeah.
You were really keen on wait to start inviting people into that dream or sharing that dream until it's kind of more fully baked. And I think you use an analogy of some sort of like, you don't want someone messing with ingredients before it's actually been put in the oven.
That's right. I think what I would say today, and what I said even back then, what I tried to communicate is, you need to get reps on sharing this. Like you need to just, there can't be a lot of, I want to do a conference, and then when people start asking you questions, to go, I don't know. Try what is,
because someone else who's a dreamer and an idea maker is going to come in and unintentionally, and I think this is what you said, there's not someone who's wanting to intentionally steal.
No.
But they're going to dream steal because their brain is, ooh, I got an idea for you. Ooh, we should do this. And then they feel bought in, and you're like, well, I'm not, I don't know yet. I don't know what the Lord's saying.
And here's the thing, for them, it's just another project.
Yeah.
Right? For you, it had been something that you had been living with and carrying for a while.
Yeah.
And I remember that night, and it was so amazing to hear you say, Gary, I can't get this off
Yeah.
my mind. I can't get it off my heart. It's like you were a little pregnant.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
I don't know if you could be a little pregnant, but you were.
But at that point, you're right. We had enough prayer and meetings as our core team to know this thing was going to do something. We had a little bit of a timeline, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think, again, it's always unintentional, but there are dream sharers, right? Which I was cautioning you against. But then there's dream stealers too.
Yeah.
And you do have to be careful about the dream stealer.
there's also dream encouragers, and you were one of them. Walk me through. You get a chance. You're making films a lot. You are part of a lot of creative projects. In the creative process, how do you choose who gets to be at the dream state with you versus who kind of needs to maybe later in the process be a little bit of an antagonist in the editing process? Because those people are good, right? To push against an idea and go, hey, let me get you some holes.
Yeah.
But who's in that dream state? Are there qualifiers for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So no one who has anything to do with finance is at the dream state. I'm serious. No one. So my bookkeeper, when I'm doing work for clients, and our clients that I work with, their CFO is not coming in to the whiteboard. So and then the other qualifiers are I just want blue sky people. I don't want people at that first stage to say, why would we do it that way? Because I think it would be fun. Let's put it on the whiteboard. Yeah. Why not? Right. And so those really are my dad used to tell me all the time. He loved the Nike. He loved the Nike slogan, just do it.
Yeah.
He loved it. And he's like, before he died, he was like, Gary, just do it. That was his thing. Just do it. And I know he didn't know what it really meant, but, he was that guy in my life. He was the guy who was just go, try. And so I always wanted to have somebody at that whiteboard who would just say, go, just do it. Now, I didn't want someone to be writing and leading the whiteboard session. That was my job. And I think that for you, SALT was clearly your whiteboard experience. It was yours.
Yeah.
And it was never mine.
Yeah.
It was never, if you would have said, I want you to partner with me in this, I would have gone, no, that's not my thing.
Yeah.
That's yours.
Yeah.
And so for anyone who has a project or something bigger on their heart and they feel like God has put it there, I would say be careful who you dream with, but you can invite someone to a whiteboard session that lasts 60 minutes and say, in and out, I'm buying lunch. Here's $100. Thank you for meeting with me.
Yeah. Bill Gates always says, rent dreamers, hire doers.
There it is.
So
there it is.
Make sure that you get enough dreamers at a table for a short time,
For a short time. It can only be for a short time because that'll get exhausting.
When,
you know that.
When, and not just on the SALT side, but, in your creative process, you see it all the time. When do you invite the naysayers in? Because they're going to have to be part of it in some capacity, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think when I've got
because reality has to be faced.
Yes. So I think for me, when I've got a creative brief done, or I've got a creative, like a story arc that I feel like is, I think 70% cooked, 60% cooked or whatever, then I invite the naysayers in. So then I invite people in who are going to say, man, that script feels like you wrote it to church people. You used a lot of churchy words in the script like that. And so I need those kind of people. I want, and you do too. And we know that, right? So that's on a project basis. But when it comes to organizationally, right, which you and I are in now, we need those people to have the courage to not just be our yes people. Yeah. And we need the people to push back. But here's the thing. We invite them to push back by being a part of this thing that is ultimately your baby. And ultimately it's my baby. I've invited you to push back. I expect you to push back.
Yeah.
It's who you are, right?
Yeah.
If I'm glass half full, you're glass half empty. And but I need you here.
Yeah.
And you can't stay quiet.
Yeah.
And here's what I always tell people. When you poke holes in it, okay, it's still up to me to decide.
Yeah.
All right. And you can't carry resentment if I decide to go in a different direction.
I love that last quote that he had, or that last thing he said is, it's up to me to decide.
Yeah.
Because the dreamer to the naysayer, when it's time for their input, like, he wants that. And I guess that speaks to my heart because I am a little bit more of a naysayer. I'm not a whiteboard creative. I'm not usually the one in that room. I'm the doer or the naysayer, the one poking holes. And there is a time for us naysayers. There is a time for us doers who aren't the dreamers. But to be clear and to have that clarity and those boundaries is so healthy for a team.
That's so true.
Gary
has a really interesting pulse on introverts and extroverts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I'll never forget the very first SALT conference. He like asked the room, how many of you are introverts? And like a ton of hands raised. No one said anything. He's like, how many of you are extroverts? And there were like 3 like, yeah, like all the way in the back
so extrovert. Yeah.
audience. He was like, yep, we knew that. And I feel like what he just said in that conversation, and there's so much more that I want you to go dive into. Like that was only a small little clip of a really rich conversation about creativity in the church. But he said something I think that's so obvious, but dangerous if we ignore it. Like not every idea needs an audience, and every introvert's now going, praise him, you know? Not every dream needs a room, but I think that people need to feel safe to carry things forward. I think that ideas in their infancies are like fragile newborn kids, and they need a lot of care. They need a lot of nurturing, and you're not just going to hand that baby over to anybody.
No.
Right?
So wash their hands.
To wash their hands. And I think this is really true in the church because I don't think, at least from my experience, what I can speak to is church ideas are not just ideas. They are calling. It's the thing we feel so compelled to do. It's more than just a prayer. It has likely been a journey that you've gone through with Christ. It is so personal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we want to spend the rest of the episode talking specifically about some of those things that Gary went into, what actually prevents dreaming inside organizations, and the role of clarity in that process.
Yeah. First things first. I mean, there can be a team that's too large to dream with. I mean, you and I have both experienced it.
Everyone has probably experienced this, even in high school group projects.
And the crappy part is you don't notice it until you're in the room and you're like, oh, we have way too many people in this room, right? Because I think there's this, before I feel like I really refined creative process and understanding who do you need to have in the room, I think I felt this pressure of like, oh, let me get every single person. Like, let's attack this with like death by 1,000 ideas.
Yeah.
And let's throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks.
Classic.
And I'm just like, no, that's not it. Right?
Well, it's science. Science has proved this.
Okay.
So there is a study by Yale psychologist Irving Janis that
say that name 4 times fast.
Irving. I'm not gonna. Yeah. Groups of 3 to 5 people are really the key. Like that's what you want to hone in for. You want to keep it smaller, and those spaghetti on the wall bring thousands of people in. It just hurts the process overall, scientifically, which I love. And I'm not going to dive into the science of it because I don't necessarily understand the science of it. But what you need to know is that there is increased self-censorship the more people you have in a room. Social loafing, which if you don't know, that's just a fun thing. Look it up. Social loafing. It's basically like, well,
it's not every day on the pod that we say the word social loaf.
No, but that's the typical high school group project. Is like, well, some people are doing it. I'll sit back. I don't need to put much effort in.
I'll coast.
That's
I'll ride
social loafing. Yeah. And then deference to perceived authority or lack of control in that dream state, which we're going to talk about. You need those boundaries and clarity and some control in the dream state. And then ideas are criticized faster, which is the bandwagon effect. And this one was new for me. I've not really heard of the bandwagon effect.
Oh, I've experienced
it. You get
10, 15 people in a room, and I think what happens is someone maybe, the like antagonist player in the room, the like naysayer, as Gary talks about, they speak up and they're just so sick and tired of this meeting running long. And so their priority becomes the screw up for everybody else. And so they're like, I don't love that idea. And someone else feels that. And they're like, oh, I don't either. And like what happens is people don't actually feel the freedom to be themselves, I think. Mm-hmm. That's what I believe. This
like bandwagon around the
totally.
One person. Yeah.
And I mean, it's a little bit what you talked about of like that social loafing of, you're going to ride the coattails of someone else, right? If you're in a group project and that kid in high school, like did nothing, it's like, well, I'm just going to attach to Caitlin because she does all the work.
And I did. Unfortunately, you know me well.
You get 15, 20 people in a room. Maybe that should be something that we should ask people. Like, who were you on the team?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. I will say, though, it feels like it's a great meeting sometimes because productivity increases. You get all these people's input and then people want to move on it. You get people excited. I mean, that's great. But a lot of people being excited maybe doesn't mean you've done the dreaming
But
part.
Just because you have a newborn doesn't mean you can stuff broccoli down their throat.
Yeah.
Okay? Even though you may want them to not have to be held and you feed a bottle. I can tell you as a dad of a parent, actually the bottle's kind of nice because they can't throw food back at you. They can't throw it on the floor, right? Like it's not a complete and utter mess.
Yeah, yeah.
They just took the bottle, but
productivity increases, but the novel thinking, the light bulb moments, the real creativity goes down.
So true.
Because of all those reasons we live.
Yeah, I mean, early dreaming really is like kindling. I mean, it's not a bonfire. You can't just throw a log on it. And I think that's what's so neat about what Gary put into this. You were talking about just the self-censorship and all this sort of stuff. So I feel like what you're really saying is we need to be in a safe space. I think that starts at the leader.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about.
There's a reason you're the leader. You set the tone.
You do.
Yeah, yeah.
I think, there's this term out there like psychological safety that I think people won't be free to allow their ideas that you may be bringing to the whiteboard session to say, hey, I've got a baby. Do you have a baby too? Like maybe we can borrow some clothing from your baby and we can attach it to this and we can help this baby become a little bit more strong.
Yeah.
I promise we're not going to talk about babies this entire
like
episode, but I'm starting to, it's analogy starting to work
really well. That's all right. Everyone will remember the baby analogies.
But like, I think let's talk a little bit about defining psychological safety because it's not just being nice, right? It doesn't mean I'm not going to critique. I think it ultimately is built around trust.
Yes. Room for the risk. Yeah.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like being willing to say, like, I don't know. Like, and I think that there's a vulnerability and there's an amazing amount of confidence, I think, that actually comes out. I tell our team all the time, like, be the first to apologize when you screw up.
I just feel like this is a great example. Sometimes maybe people of faith feel it more of when don't follow the world in this. Yeah. The world tells us never say, I don't know. Like there are studies out there and viral videos about don't say, I don't know. Like, say something else like, oh, I'll get that answer for you. No, like in these spaces, in these creative whiteboard dreaming spaces, admit I don't know. And maybe yet is the key word there. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
But it is okay to say that, or I'm still working this out.
Yeah. And I think that trust and I mean, you don't want to invite somebody to a whiteboarding session who knows it all, who is never willing to say like, oh, I don't actually know, because that's going to be the person that is going to derail that conversation too, right? Because they're never going to.
The loafer.
It is.
The loafer is sitting there like, well, I'm just listening to you guys. Yeah.
So there's actually interesting research around this too. Google years and years ago did Project Aristotle. Some people may know about this. It was a pretty huge research, and they studied over 180 teams. And here's what they ultimately found, that the number one predictor of high performing teams was if they had psychological safety.
Isn't that crazy?
The number one. It mattered more than talent. It mattered more than experience. It mattered more than seniority. It mattered more than clear goals. But does their team feel safe around each other?
That's amazing.
I mean, that's crazy,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, and they went on, this was part of it, but like teams with higher safety, they took on more creative risks together. Mm-hmm. They shared more incomplete ideas earlier, which would allow them to actually get developed and fleshed out rather than having to be presented in like its full final state. And teams that had higher psychological safety were more willing to fail, which I think also allows them to recover fast.
Yeah.
Right?
I feel like in previous podcast seasons, we talked a ton about constraints and failure and how that makes you more creative, and it just promotes that in so many ways. So I love this.
You have to. I mean,
idea. Like you have to be comfortable failing. You have to feel safe failing so that you can be more creative. You can find the right idea.
If there is a brand or a product that those of you that are watching this love, like think about who made that product or brand.
Yeah.
Okay? The entrepreneur behind it, the business owner, the inventor or whatever, all of them had to be really close and comfortable with fear.
Gosh.
Of failure.
Go look up the first day that Disney parks opened. Talk about
was it not
failure.
Awesome? What happened?
It was terrible.
Oh, because they had too many people?
This is a teaser for our next episode.
Oh.
So many people showed up. Women's high heels were sinking into the roads.
Oh, because the
asphalt wasn't
cement
done.
was not finished.
They were like spray painting up to the last minute, different buildings and stuff. Like things were not done. Things were not ready. Food, there wasn't enough food for everybody. Like it was terrible. Yeah. It was failure.
I mean, any inventor,
they're known as for their creativity,
right?
So.
Like Edison said, like,
yeah.
I didn't have 1,000 failed ideas. I found 1,000 ways not to make the light bulb, right? So it's like all that sort of stuff. So,
well, and the best ideas, what I'm hearing and brings me comfort is that they don't come from the smartest person in the room. So if you've ever struggled with that internally, like, well, I'm not the smartest one here. That's not where the best ideas come from. They come from the person that probably feels the safest to fail and just to throw out the bad ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, self-editing kills imagination.
Yeah. So as a leader, I mean, circling back, as a leader who is setting the tone and setting the boundaries and creating that space for your creatives, let them know there is no danger and make sure that you are leading that. be the first one to maybe share the stupidest idea in the room. I don't know, but just make sure that they know it's safe. They're not there being evaluated for their ideas. It's not about them. It's about the ideas and it's about the product. I will say those are the best teams I've worked with, where it's all like, we're in it for the same reasons. It's not about us. It's about this thing we're building. So who cares if it's bad?
And I'll say this, a room that has psychological safety, more spaghetti is going to stick on the wall naturally.
Yeah.
Because people are willing to throw things, and they're also willing to, in kindness and in love, say, I think we can make that better, right? I think we can improve that. And my dad used to always teach me, like, it's amazing what can happen when you're in a room of people who don't care who gets the credit. Because that is the way in which things can move forward. So
yeah. All that self-criticism, it just kills imagination.
You're talking about leaders.
Yes.
Let's talk about leaders.
Let's talk about leaders.
So leaders, the second piece that you talked about. So we've talked about sort of, the role that prevents dreaming in an organization, but let's now talk about the role of clarity.
Yeah.
Right? Do you want to take this
From
one?
my great quote, that I just shared. Yeah, creativity. I feel like creatives, again, I've worked with a ton of creatives because I'm not one, I'm the doer, but creatives hate structure. They want full flexibility. They want walls, no boundaries. They say they hate structure, but I don't think they always understand.
Let me say something controversial.
What it is.
Creatives actually need structure more than anybody. Yeah, they just don't realize it.
They do. Should we whisper this? I mean,
don't tell them.
People are going to turn off this podcast when they.
I'm a creative, and it's like if you give me well, first off, if you're a professional creative,
yes, and
I don't mean that as in like you get paid to be creative, but I say you've moved beyond. Yeah, you've moved beyond hobby mode. This is something that you have worked out, right? I mean, Brene Brown talks about this in Think Big or Magic. What's our Magic book? Anyway, but she talks about like the real creative shows up every day and does the work, right? So I do think creatives need boundaries. So what I'm saying here is the professional creative has to have clarity in how we move forward in a process. And I am someone who loves it. I love a boundary. I love a constraint. I love something that's going to say, well, we can't think outside this box. It's like the Apollo 11 scene where it's like, okay, we have to get from this to this. Only using this.
Yeah.
There's so
literally
much
no. Yeah. Oh, I love it. I have to look at our show notes because you shared a line that I really love.
Okay.
Ambiguity, not structure, is the creativity killer.
So true.
And I just feel like that specifically needs said.
Yeah. I mean, I think multiple studies out there show, I wish I had all the specific research, but multiple studies show that clear constraints actually increase originality.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that so often people will think that like, oh, this is control and it's limiting me. It's all this. No, it's actually allowing you to put your idea into a place where diversity can increase and decision cycles can be shortened, and you actually can risk because you know where the walls are. You're not afraid of going into the universe of never-ending walls. It's like, no, I'm in my box. I can play with the box.
It's almost like a well-honed habit. Your creativity has become practiced because you have these, lines and boundaries that, decisions are shorter.
Yeah.
You're risk-taking. You're not afraid to do it as much. So you just dive right on in. You take that risk, but you also know the right risks to take a little bit more. And I love that.
And I love that Gary in the thing talks about like the naysayer, like to have clarity. And this is still my thing. You mentioned that like, this helping people understand the role that they can play in the process is going to be super important too, because editors are important, right? And naysayers and antagonists, and those that are going to poke holes in a vision. You can't launch a vision without them. But it's a matter of giving them clarity as to when they come into this. So
yeah, I definitely understand people like me, the naysayers, the critiquers, the let me poke holes. We edit very early, and that's the reason we need to not be invited into that room.
Yeah, you're good about this sometimes in meetings. I feel like you'll call out like, here's why we want so-and-so in this room. There's conversations we've had even about this podcast in the studio where you're like, I want Dustin, our studio manager, to be in this room. And then there's sometimes you just want us, or you want the marketing person because you want various people.
And on the flip side, it's hard to say, I'm sorry, but you can't be in the room yet.
Well, first off, that's organizational inefficiency.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not always personalities or because we're not ready for them in this phase, but it's just they don't need to waste their time on that. That's just inefficient. But yeah.
Can I say something as when we're talking about clarity and why clarity is so important? Something I want to say to leaders is I want to be really clear about this, but you need to speak last.
Ooh.
I also think
I have seen this so much with you in a room. It's so important.
So a guy said this the other day in a conversation. He was trying to tell his sales guys like this one thing, but he said there's an acronym out there. WAIT. Have I told you this yet?
I'm trying to remember. I don't know.
I feel like everyone needs to use this in their next streaming meeting or something. But WAIT stands for Why Am I
Oh,
Talking?
yes. Yes. Write this one down. We'll put it in the show notes for sure.
Wait, why am I talking? And I feel like as a leader, you need to understand if you're in a psychologically safe space and you've defined the roles well, then people are looking to you to set the temperature in the room.
Yeah. They want to feed off of your idea, not others. They're like, well, he's the leader. So what's his idea? Well,
And they may bandwagon around
Yeah.
thinking, oh, if the leader thinks that I'm always on his, I'm not that leader. I'm like, I want more people in the room to go, that idea is awful.
Yeah.
Let's not do that, right?
Thankfully, I get to work for Luke, who's
But-
like, don't jump on my ideas.
But I feel like when you speak last, you allow all the other ideas to surface. And even if you have an idea that trumps everything or doesn't, it doesn't stop other people from speaking, right? Like you can jump in, you can add value to that. And I also think it helps deepen trust when you say, like, I'm not coming to this meeting with all the answers.
Yeah. You have said that in a lot of our meetings. And I know I've appreciated that because I am someone who's like, well, Luke already has a plan. We just have to stick with that plan. So when you say, I don't know yet, guys, that's why I'm coming to you. I'm raising the flag.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I called this meeting. I want ideas. And then I'm like, oh, okay. So this is up for everybody. We're not jumping on one idea and just figuring it out right now. That's the
So speak
creative
last.
thinking. Yeah.
You also, I think when you speak last, can synthesize maybe some things that are like connected,
Mm-hmm.
and you can help your team realize like, oh, these are actually very similar ideas. Let's put that in one bucket. Because
Mm-hmm.
as Gary said in there, like, you're not going to give the whiteboard marker up to anybody else. And that's why I want you to speak last.
Yeah.
Because you've actually been orchestrating like a well-tuned musical band,
Mm-hmm.
all these little instruments and all these voices and all these noises. And so you've pulled it all together. So
I will refer back to almost that last line, though. Speaking last does not mean you're just taking whatever idea became the loudest or felt the stickiest. You still have those boundaries and that clarity of, this is my dream. This is my baby. And at the end of the day, I'm deciding. So just make sure that that is still clear to your team so that even if you're a little bit quiet and even if you're not speaking until last, they still know that at the end of the day, you're the one making that decision.
Yeah.
It's your call.
So I feel like if you remember nothing else, remember this order: safety first, clarity second, critiquing last.
Yes.
I feel like that's so vital for teams.
Yeah. And when it's reverse, it'll be compliance over creativity.
Oh,
It'll,
okay. Maybe that's another whole podcast episode.
I know. The big C's, compliance and creativity. You don't want that.
So be careful who you dream with. I mean, I think that's obviously where we started and all this, but we're so excited that we get a chance to be a part of a community that dives into creativity and dreaming and creative process and helping leaders become better stewards of the teams that they've been called to. And so what a neat and awesome conversation.
Yeah. And I appreciate all you creatives and leaders out there because you are very protective of understanding that these dreams need protection before they need feedback. So thank you for that. Thank you for having sometimes those closed door meetings that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's the pod.
That's the pod.